When the government gives you a tax break for being in debt, it is not because they're concerned about your financial future. The government is concerned about its financial future. So when your banker, your accountant, your attorney, and your teachers tell you that your house is an asset, they just fail to say whose asset it is. What about savings? Are they assets? Now, your savings really are assets. That's the good news. But again, if you read financial statements, you'll understand the total picture. While it's true that your savings are assets, when you look across town at the bank's balance sheet, your savings show up as a liability. This is what your savings and checkbook balance look like in your asset column, and this is how your savings and your checkbook balance are carried on your bank's balance sheet. Why are your savings and checkbook balances a liability to banks? Because they have to pay you interest for your money, and it costs them money to safeguard it. If you can grasp the significance of these few drawings and words, you might begin to better understand what the eyes cannot see about the game of money. Why you don't get a tax break for saving money. If you notice, you get a tax break for buying a house and going into debt, but you don't get a tax break for saving money. Have you ever wondered why? I'm not sure either, but I imagine that one big reason is because your savings are a liability to banks. Why would they ask the government to pass a law that would encourage you to put even more money in their bank, money that is a liability to them? They don't need your savings. Besides, banks really don't need your savings. They don't need much in deposits because they can magnify money at least 10 times. If you put $1 in the bank, by law, the bank can lend out $10 and, depending upon the reserve limits imposed by the central bank, possibly much more. That means your single $1 suddenly becomes $10 or more. It's magic. When my rich dad showed me that, I fell in love with the idea. At that point, I knew that I wanted to own a bank and not go to school to become a banker. On top of that, the bank may pay less than 1% interest on that $1. In better economic times, it could be 5% and you, as a consumer, would feel secure because the bank is paying you something on your money. Banks see this as good customer relations because, if you have savings with them, you may come in and borrow money too. They want you to do this because they can then charge 9% or more on what you borrow. While you may make less than 1% on your $1, the bank can make 9% or more on the $10 of debt your single dollar has generated. Recently, I received a new credit card offer that advertised 8.9% interest. But since I understood the legal jargon in the fine print, I saw it was really 23%. Needless to say, I took a pass. They get your savings anyway. The other reason they don't offer a tax break for savings is more obvious. If you can read the numbers and see which way the cash is flowing, you'll notice that they'll get your savings anyway. The money you could be saving in your asset column is flowing instead out of your liability column in the form of interest payments on your mortgage. This ends up in the bank's asset column. The cash flow pattern looks like this. That's why they don't need the government to give you a tax incentive to save. They'll get your savings anyway in the form of interest payments on debt. Politicians aren't about to mess with the system because the banks, insurance companies, building industry, brokerage houses, and others contribute a lot of money to their campaigns, and the politicians know the name of the game. The name of the game. In 1974 my rich dad was upset because the game was played against me, and I didn't know it. I had bought this investment property and had taken a losing position, yet I'd been led to believe it was a winning position. "I'm glad you entered the game," said Rich Dad. "But because no one has ever told you what the game is, you've just been suckered over to the losing team." Rich Dad then explained the basics of the game. The name of the game of capitalism is, who is indebted to whom? Once I knew the game, I could be a better player instead of someone who just had the game run all over them. The more people you are indebted to, the poorer you are. The more people you're indebted to, the poorer you are, said Rich Dad. And the more people of you have indebted to you, the wealthier you are. That's the game. As I said, I struggled to keep my mind open. So I stayed silent and let him explain. We're all in debt to someone else. The problems occur when the debt gets out of balance. Unfortunately, the poor people of this world have been run over so hard by the game that they often can't get any deeper into debt. The same is true for poor countries. The world simply takes from the poor, the weak, and the financially uninformed. If you have too much debt, the world takes everything you have, including your time, your work, your home, your life, your confidence, even your dignity, if you let them. I don't make the rules, but I do know the game, and I play it well. I'll explain the game to you if you want to learn to play. Then, after you've mastered the game, you can decide what to do with what you know. Money is debt. Rich Dad went on to explain that even our currency isn't an instrument of equity, but an instrument of debt. Every dollar used to be backed by gold or silver but is now an IOU guaranteed to be paid by the taxpayers of the issuing country. As long as the rest of the world has confidence in the American taxpayer to work and pay for this IOU called money, the world has confidence in our dollar. If that key element of money, confidence, suddenly disappears, the economy comes down like a house of cards. Take the example of the German Weimar government marks that became utterly worthless just before World War II. As one story goes, an elderly woman was pushing a wheelbarrow full of marks to buy a loaf of bread. When she turned her back, someone stole the wheelbarrow and left the pile of worthless money all over the street. That's why most money today is known as fiat money, money that cannot be converted to something tangible like gold or silver. The money is only good as long as people have confidence in the government backing it. Today, much of the global economy is based on debt and confidence. As long as we all keep holding hands and no one breaks ranks, everything will be fine. By the way, the word FINE is my acronym for feeling insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Who is indebted to whom? Going back to 1974 when I was learning how to buy that $56,000 condo, my rich dad taught me an important lesson on how to structure deals. Who is indebted to whom is the name of the game, said Rich Dad. And somebody just stuck you with a debt. It's like going to dinner with 10 friends. You go to the restroom and when you come back, the bill is there, but all 10 friends are gone. If you're going to play the game, then you had better understand it, know the rules, speak the same language, and know with whom you're playing. If you don't, instead of playing the game will be played on you. It's only a game. At first I got angry at what the rich dad was saying, but I listened and did my best to understand. Finally, he put it into a context that I could understand. You love playing football, don't you? He asked. I nodded my head. I love the game, I said. Well, money is my game, said Rich Dad. I love the money game. But for many people, money isn't a game, I said. That's correct, said Rich Dad. For most people, it's survival. For most people, money is a game they're forced to play, and they hate it. Unfortunately, the more civilized we get, the more money becomes a part of our lives. Rich Dad drew the cash flow quadrant. Just look at this as a tennis court, football field, or soccer field. If you're going to play the money game, which team do you want to be on, the E's, S's, B's, or I's? Or which side of the court do you want to be on, the right side or the left? I quickly pointed to the right side. If you take on debt and risk, you should be paid. Good, said the rich dad. That's why you can't go out there to play the game and believe some sales agent when he tells you that to lose $150 a month for 30 years is a good deal because the government will give you a tax break for losing money and he expects the price of real estate to go up. You simply can't play the game with that mindset. While those opinions might come true, that's just not the way the game is played on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. Somebody is telling you to go into debt, take all the risks, and pay for it. People on the left side think that's a good idea, but not the people on the right. I was shaking a little. Look at it my way, said Rich Dad. You're willing to pay $56,000 for this condo in the sky. You're signing for the debt and taking all the risk. The tenant pays less in rent than what it costs to live there. So you're subsidizing that person's housing. Does that make sense to you? I shook my head. This is the way I play the game, said Rich Dad. From now on, if you take on debt and risk, then you should get paid. Got that? I nodded my head. Making money is common sense, said the rich dad. It's not rocket science. But unfortunately, when it comes to money, common sense is uncommon. A banker tells you to take on debt so the government can give you a tax break. That doesn't make fundamental economic sense. Then a real estate agent tells you to sign the papers because he can find a tenant who will pay you less than you're paying, but, in his opinion, the value of the condo will go up. If that makes sense to you, then you and I don't share the same common sense. I just stood there. I heard everything he said, and I had to admit that I'd gotten so excited by what I thought looked like a good deal that my logic went out the window and I didn't analyze the deal. Because the deal looked good, I had become emotional with greed and excitement, and I was no longer able to hear what the numbers and the words were telling me. It was then that the rich dad gave me an important rule that he has always used: your profit is made when you buy, not when you sell. Rich dad had to be certain that whatever debt or risk he took on, it made sense from the day he bought it. It had to make sense if the economy got worse, and it had to make sense if the economy got better. He never bought on tax tricks or crystal ball forecasts of the future. A deal had to make sound economic sense in good times and in bad. I was beginning to understand the game of money as he saw it. Clearly, the game was to see others become indebted to you, and to be careful to whom you became indebted. Today, I still hear his words: if you take on risk and debt, make sure you get paid for it. Rich dad had debt, but he was careful when he took it on. If you take on debt personally, make sure it's small. If you take on large debt, make sure someone else is paying for it. He saw the game of money and debt as a game that is played on you, played on me, played on everyone. It's played from business to business, and it's played from country to country. To him it was only a game. But for most people, money isn't a game. It's survival. And because no one explained the game to them, they still believe bankers who say a house is an asset. The importance of facts versus opinions. Rich dad continued his lesson: if you want to be successful on the right side, you've got to know the difference between facts and opinions. You can't blindly accept financial advice the way people on the left side do. You must know the numbers. The numbers will tell you the facts. Your financial survival depends upon facts, not some friend or advisor's wordy opinions. I don't understand. What's the big deal about something being a fact or an opinion? Is one better than the other? No, replied Rich Dad. Just know when something is a fact and when something is an opinion. Still puzzled, I stood there with a confused look on my face. What is your family's home worth? Asked the Rich Dad. Oh, I know, I replied quickly. My parents are thinking about selling, so they had a real estate agent come in and do an appraisal. They said the house was worth $36,000. That means my dad's net worth increased by $16,000 because he only paid $20,000 for it 5 years ago. So is the appraisal and your dad's net worth a fact or an opinion? Asked the Rich Dad. I thought about it for a while and understood what he was getting at. Both are opinions, aren't they? Rich Dad nodded his head. Very good. Most people struggle financially because they spend their lives using opinions rather than facts when making financial decisions. Opinions such as: your house is an asset. The price of real estate always goes up. Blue chip stocks are your best investment. It takes money to make money. Stocks have always outperformed real estate. You should diversify your portfolio. You have to be dishonest to be rich. Investing is risky. Play it safe. I sat there deep in thought, realizing that most of what I heard about money at home was really people's opinions, not facts. Is gold an asset? Asked the Rich Dad, snapping me out of my daydream. Yes. Of course, I replied. It's the only real money that has withstood the test of time. See, there you go again, smiled Rich Dad. All you're doing is repeating someone else's opinion about what is an asset rather than checking out the facts. Gold is only an asset, by my definition, if you buy it for less than you sell it for, Rich Dad said slowly. In other words, if you bought it for $100 and sold it for $200, then it was an asset. But if you bought 1 ounce for $200 and you sold it for $100, then gold in this transaction was a liability. It is the actual financial numbers of the transaction that ultimately tell you the facts. In reality, the only thing that is an asset or a liability is you, because only you can make decisions that make gold an asset or a liability. That is why financial education is so important. I've seen so many people take a perfectly good business or a piece of real estate and turn it into a financial nightmare. Many people do the same in their personal lives. They take hard-earned money and create a lifetime of financial liabilities. I was even more confused, a little hurt inside, and wanted to argue. Rich Dad was toying with my brain. Many a man has been suckered because he didn't know the facts. Every day I hear horror stories of someone who lost all their money because they thought an opinion was a fact. It's okay to use an opinion when making a financial decision, but you must know the difference. Millions of people have made life decisions based upon opinions handed down from generation to generation. And then they wonder why they struggle financially. What kind of opinions? I asked. Rich Dad chuckled to himself before he answered, "Well, let me give you a few common ones we have all heard. You should marry him. He'll make a good husband. Find a secure job and stay there all your life. Doctors make a lot of money. They have a big house. They must be rich. He has big muscles. He must be healthy. This is a nice car. It's only been driven by a little old lady. There is not enough money for everyone to be rich. The earth is flat. Humans will never fly. He's smarter than his sister. Bonds are safer than stocks. People who make mistakes are stupid. He will never sell for such a low price. She will never go out with me. Investing is risky. I'll never be rich. I didn't go to college, so I'll never get ahead. You should diversify your investments. You should not diversify your investments." Rich Dad went on and on until finally he could tell I was tired of hearing his examples of opinions. "Okay. I've heard enough. What's your point?" "Thought you'd never stop me," Rich Dad said, smiling. "The point is that most people's lives are determined by their opinions, rather than the facts. For a person's life to change, they first need to change their opinions and then start looking at the facts. If you can read financial statements, you'll be able to see the facts of an individual's or company's financial success rather than going by opinions, yours or somebody else's. As I said, one is not better than the other. But, to be successful in life, especially financially, you must know the difference. If you can't verify something is a fact, then it's an opinion. Financial blindness occurs when a person can't read a financial statement, leaving them to rely on someone else's opinion. Financial insanity is caused when opinions are used as facts. If you want to be on the right side of the cash flow quadrant, you must know the difference between facts and opinions. Few lessons are more important than this one. I sat there listening quietly, doing my best to understand what he was saying. It was obviously a simple concept, yet it was larger than my brain could accept at that moment. "Do you know what due diligence is?" the Rich Dad asked. I shook my head. Due diligence simply means doing your homework and finding out which statements are opinions and which are facts. When it comes to money, most people are either lazy or searching for shortcuts, so they don't do enough due diligence. And there are still others who are so afraid of making mistakes that all they do is due diligence and then do nothing. Too much due diligence is also called analysis paralysis. The point is that you must know how to sift through facts and opinions, and then make your decision. As I said, most people are in financial trouble today simply because they've taken too many shortcuts and are making their life's financial decisions based upon opinions, often the opinions of an E or an S, and not the facts. If you want to be a B or an I, you must be keenly aware of this difference. I didn't fully appreciate the Rich Dad's lesson that day, yet few lessons have served me better than that one. Years later, in the early 1990s, Rich Dad watched the stock market climb out of sight. His only comment was, "That's what happens when highly paid employees or self-employed people with big paychecks paying excessive amounts in taxes, greatly in debt, and with only paper assets in their portfolio begin handing out investment advice. Millions are about to get hurt following the opinions of people who think they know the facts. Warren Buffett, America's greatest investor, once said, "If you're in a poker game and after 20 minutes you don't know who the patsy is, then you're the patsy." Why people struggle financially. Would you believe that most people will be in debt from the day they leave school until the day they die? It's true. This is the average middle-class American's financial picture. Someone else's balance sheet. If you now understand the game, then you may realize that those liabilities must show up on someone else's balance sheet as assets, like this. Anytime you hear these words, low down payment, easy monthly payments, or don't worry, the government will give you a tax break for those losses, then you know someone is luring you into the game. If you want to be financially free, you've got to be smarter than that. Most people don't have anyone who is indebted to them. They have no real assets, things that put money in their pocket, and they're often indebted to everyone else. That's why they cling to job security and struggle financially. If it weren't for their job, they'd be broke in a flash. In fact, the average American is less than 3 paychecks away from bankruptcy. They seek a better life and get run over by the game because the deck is stacked against them. They still think their house, car, golf clubs, clothes, vacation home, and other doodads are assets. They believe what someone else tells them because they can't read financial numbers to see the truth for themselves. Most people go to school and learn to be players in the game, but no one explains the rules to them. No one tells them that the name of the game is, who is indebted to whom? And because no one tells them that, they are the ones who become indebted to everyone else. Money is an idea. I hope you now understand the basics of the cash flow quadrant and know that money really is an idea that is more clearly seen with your mind than with your eyes. Learning the game of money and how it is played is an important part of your journey to financial freedom. Even more important is who you need to become to move to the right side of the cash flow quadrant. Part 2 of this book focuses on bringing out the best in you and on analyzing the formula. Be. Do. Have.